we've done our intros. We've done our announcements. Well, a few announcements. I did add a little slide here for upcoming events. In Boulder, our chapter will be discussing economic restoration issues, February 5th. And later in February will be the National Native Seed Conference, which I will be attending on behalf of CoNPS. And of course, the very important SCR World Conference. We are still looking for volunteers, I believe. Is that correct, Maggie? And we'll be leading some programming at that event. And all of these slides and all the materials that we cover today will be sent after this meeting. So don't worry about scrambling and getting those links because we'll be sending them out. And did want to add a little bit of a job spotlight because some of our partners are hiring for seasonal crews, CNHP, of course, and EcoPoint, who we have some people here. And WRV will be posting their seasonal project coordinators later this month, according to their website. So if you know anyone, or if you are someone looking for seasonal employment, those are hot to trap right now. And an update on our native plant materials program for next year. As I mentioned last month, our target species list is still in development. We're having some back and forth between the forest managers and the people who assist us with cleaning and growing out and giving us updates on like, what do we actually have enough of? What do we have potential issues with from a horticultural standpoint? And it's mostly decided, but it is still in flux. It is still okay to do your iNaturalist scouting and scouting work. And we'll do a little bit of review on that in a bit. But if you've already been doing them for these old target species that are on the out list, you don't have to worry. You don't have to go in and remove them. There's a way that we can filter those out on the back end, so you don't have to go in and remove them manually. That would be an onerous process. And the list of species on the inside is definitely what we're keeping. We expect to add more species to this list, both as main target and as opportunistic species. So while that's still in flux, you can absolutely still do these in species. And we will finalize the project pages with all of this information once it's all decided. And that should be well before the end of February. So, and actually, Maggie, do you want to switch over and do your species? Because those are basically.
I definitely do.
Sorry?
I was just putting some last minute photo credits.
Okay.
All right, friends. So I put some links in the chat related to what Melly was talking about and the SCR proposal that we got accepted. And today we're going to look at 2 species and we'll walk through this general process we use to train people on how to be sure when you're collecting seed, you have to be real sure you're collecting the right seed. And so that's what we're trying to do in this restoration committee of the Colorado Native Plant Society. And so referencing that species list that Melly presented, like in every committee meeting, we'll try to cover some of those species. And then also our team with CNHP, we're working on a species guide. And so in the next couple of months, we'll be publishing basically a version of what we talk about in these committee meetings for training purposes. And like for Jenny and EcoPoint, like this is the kind of stuff that we can help you accomplish for your contracts to collect seed. And we appreciate all the professional interest in this committee. All right, I'm gonna share my slides. So we're gonna talk about tufted hairgrass and Liatris punctata today. Are you guys familiar with those species in general? Yay, thanks for some feedback, Allison.
Yes.
Love ya. You're making me wish I lived in Chaffee County again. That was quite a life. All right, hold on one second. I did just give a talk for the Northern chapter. And so actually we're gonna start a little bit farther back before we really showcase the species. So give me just one sec. All right. So I have been working on just, I can recognize most species like anecdotally just on the landscape because we collect common ones, And so I'm trying to like really train through teaching people how to use the key from like the family level, like not just the genus, which is where we usually start. So anyway, glad to see Curtis here. Please give me feedback and interject at any time. Curtis works with us at Colorado Natural Heritage Program. So the Rocky Mountain Native Plant Materials Program is implemented by both CoNPS and CNHP. So here's my effort at going from Poaceae. So I hope you enjoy it. And also before I start, I can't really see you, so I'm gonna just look one last time. Um, how many people here have a need to know with species, grasses, etc.? And what are they? You could put them in the chat. All right, I'll share my screen again. You can put them in the chat at any time. Oh, can you see yourselves or can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can.
Presentation. Okay, here we go. So we use Acrofield second edition. And so if you have one of those, you can open it to page 632. And we're going to go through Poaceae and arrive at the 5 grass keys. Or I think there's 7 grass keys. Sorry about that. All right. So the first couplet you face is asking you, are the spikelets enclosed in birds? And I had just presented a bunch of grasses, right? So no, we're not going to talk about these today. These lead to centris and bucloe. So let's go to number 3. And the bucloe we might be familiar with is dactyloides, but it just got a name change to Bouteloua. And there are burrs because it's dioecious, but they are not spiny like this. All right, so moving right along. So the next thing we see in the key is to be asked if it's corn. Can we all recognize corn? I think we can. Interestingly, like I didn't really think about how we call things tassels, but they're male spikelets and panicles are the tassels. So that was kind of interesting. And then we go on. So now we're being asked in Poaceae, are the spikelets in capitate clusters and substyle and fascicles of leaves at each branch tip? And there are only 2 species that meet this description. And it's Daciocloa, aka Monroe, also a recent name change. And it's not this, right? I don't know anyone collecting seed from this. So we're going to move right along. Now we're looking at different parts of the plant, but we see that the glooms are absent. And let me go back one slide to show you a diagram of the floret, right? So one thing we always keep in mind when we're identifying grasses is like the order of things, right? So it always goes glooms, lemma, palea, and then the floret, and there can be one or there can be many. And so when it's saying no glooms are absent, right, we don't have these protective materials that are around the outside of the fruiting body. So let's take a look at the only example of that in the Colorado flora, Lyracia, and we can see that the glooms are absent, and we can see that the blades are strongly scabrous margins, right? So this is a great picture here. You can see that's a great example of what scabrous is. And if you put your finger along that, it would be kind of rough. Now the spikelets are flat. That's kind of hard to determine. It does look kind of flattened, but it does also kind of dried out. But we can see that there's only one floret, right? There's the pedicel, and there's just one fruiting body coming off of that. Oops, sorry. And then, yeah, lemma stiffly hispid ciliate. I'm just really not seeing that. I guess you can see it at the very bottom. You can see one, and then in the far center right, you can see maybe a little of that. Okay. So we move on. All right. Now we're being asked, are we looking at florets forming mostly bulblets with shiny dark purple bases and exerted linear green tips? This is a non-native Poa bulbosa. We don't collect non-native species, so we're definitely not looking at this. This is the weirdest looking thing if you have ever seen it. And so we go on. And then we hit our keys, right? And so I've tried here to note like the genera in each key and put an asterisk next to the ones that we collect from. And so in key 1, we're looking at spikelets in pairs. In key 2, inflorescences, that's spelled wrong, sorry about that. Branches bearing spikelets all on one side. Got Bouteloua and Muhlenbergia. Really interesting. Muhlenbergia appears in a lot of the keys. I would be liking to hear what other people think about that. And then key, oh, I'm not in slideshow mode. Sorry about that. Key 3, spikelets are sessile, arranged in two-sided spikes or spike-like racemes. And we can see that we have Pascopyrum and Pseudogenaria here in this key. And then key 4, spikelets with one developed floret. Panicum, Nacellum, Muhlenbergia appears again, Sporobolus. And yeah, we go on to key 5. See, Muhlenbergia again. Spikelets with two well-developed florets. Key A, spikelets with two or more. Lemmas on. Deschampsia, Bromus, Festuca, and Muhlenbergia. And key B, spikelets with two or more florets. Lemmas onless. Colaria, Muhlenbergia, Poa, Festuca. So that's kind of an early walk on how we're going to get to where we're going to go today. Are there any questions right now? All right. So here we have tufted hairgrass. Are people familiar with this species? See a little bit in the head nodding. Super. Okay, so let's keep going. All right, so we're in key A, and what I like to do is to teach people how to key things backwards and then go forwards. So the process that I've already undergone actually starts over here, right? So if I was looking for tufted hairgrass, right, I'd figure out how do you get there. And so I would just read the key backwards. how do you get to 2B? You have to have selected 1B from the genus. And then how do you get to that genus? You would have had to select 6B, 3B, 2B, 1A, and then we arrive at the beginning. So I didn't take you, I think we're going forward now. So I've tried to collect pictures that show what it is that it's referencing. So again, for the professionals in the room, like doing this helps you to understand what you have to be looking at when you're in the field. Because it'd be easy to just look at like, you know, the joie de vivre of the plant, but actually you have to take pretty specific pictures to be able to show that. And then you're also like collecting a sample. So, but it kind of sucks when we collect the wrong plant because sometimes we just don't have anything to do with that seed, like, and that's an unfortunate reality. So as we go from the first couplet in key A, at least some lemmas on from the back, from near the middle or the base of the lemma. And some, just let me stop for a second, say ons can also like arise from the tip. And the on is usually twisted or bent, at least one gloom equal to or longer than the lowest floret. And so these pictures are all thanks to Anders Hastings, a person we've become friends with over iNaturalist, and all of these photos have come from iNaturalist. So thinking about that, I'll stop talking for a second. Just read 1A and see if you can see that. All right, are we good? Okay, so another thing that I didn't go to the diagram to show you, but you know that we can have spikelets and we can have racemes and we can have panicles, right? And these are different general shapes. And so when it's a panicle, it's like an open form, right? And that open form we can see in the lower right or lower left picture. And but it's not dense and spike-like, right? And the the ons are not densely yellowy hairy, which is kind of a weird reference, but we can see that they're not, right? And so we go there. Alternatively, we would have like spikelets arranged in dense spikelet panicle, and that would kind of be like the forb we're going to look at, which is Liatris, right? Everything's in a stick and it's all kind of closely arranged. All right. So we go to 3B, and we are being asked about the relative size of the on, right? And it's either 10 to 20 millimeters long or less than 1 to 8. And in this nice picture in the bottom right, we can measure that, right? These are big bins. And this also leads me to the thought that it's great to take these kinds of pictures in iNaturalist, right? Use some sort of measuring device. You know how big your finger is, so that works to some extent. But actually having like the inside cover of the book behind the picture or a little plastic ruler, that's really helpful too. And so these are short ons, and we don't have a measurement of the whole spikelet, but we're going to go with the on information to number 6. And then we're asking about the callus hairs and if they're long or short, and I don't actually have a picture of that. I'm sorry. And maybe it'll be on the next slide. And then we have lemmas with short hairs or ones that are glabrous, and glabrous means smooth. And so we can take a look at that sort of, but it is kind of hard to see here because we haven't picked one apart. It's probably easy to see in the bottom right picture. All right, we will go on. And so we've arrived at Deschampsia. And now we only have a couple questions. Yay, because there's only a few species. And so we're being asked if the glooms are mostly green with purple tips or purplish below or to more than half the surface with a purplish midband with white and yellow tips. And we can kind of see that. And also note that elongata, like the panicles are mostly narrow, so that would be it. Either or situation. Okay, so we're gonna go with 1B. And then as we go into the couplet for 2, the spikelets are strongly overlapping. These ones are not. They're not clustered at the tips of the branches. We see lots of purple, right? There's plenty of purple reference, and it's over half their length, which you can really see in this bottom picture here. And again, we don't really have a good measurement of the overall width of the panicle, but you could like measure that with your body parts while we're out there. And Anders' picture on the right, kind of like knowing the size of your hand can be a really helpful measurement as well. So finally, we arrive at our desired species, tufted hairgrass. And another thing that you can see, unfortunately, it looks like I kind of cut it out of the picture. But look at the distribution maps, right? These are based on herbaria specimen, and like brevifolia is really not common. And so there's a person, Georgia, who works at CNHP who can apparently like look at these maps and just know if that plant is rare based on how many dots there are on it. Maybe someone else can speak to that, but like if you get to a map and there's only that many dots, like that's not a species you should probably be collecting from. It's probably has a very limited habitat range and or is already imperiled. But then we see tufted hairgrass. It's really there in from south to north borders. And what you can also extrapolate, because you're all smart people, is this is in the mountains, right? It's not on the desert shrublands and it's not in the Great Plains. And we're not seeing a line of the continental divide there, but you know, I would probably think that it's mostly on the western slope, or at the divide, right? So that there we have tufted hairgrass. And I will take a break before we move on. How are you guys doing? Interesting questions? So we're going to talk now about Liatris punctata. And I'm sure you're all familiar with that plant. It's a gorgeous one. And it's very fun to collect seeds from it. I was collecting for the city on city property, and I just gave Alex like a boatload of this. I know where there's a really great population of it. Um, but it's a fun one. You can get a lot of seed from a single plant. And just by the way, on that note, we collect from 1 in every 5 specimens, or we collect 20% of the seed available. And so this is so that we are not over collecting and depriving the habitat in which we're collecting seeds. We are going to start in Asteraceae. I am not going to tell you how to get there. We're in key 2 in the Asteraceae, and the first thing you're being asked about, wonderfully, is not a floral component. It's a vegetative component. So we're looking at leaves, and I've got tons of pictures of the bracts on the other page. Sorry, I didn't add any here. But we can see that these are not spiny margined leaves. So we can go all the way to 5. So now the involucral bracts are these like green parts that protect and hold the inflorescence. And they're either dotted with brown translucent oil glands and they smell bad, dysodia, or they're not dotted with brownish translucent oil glands. And yeah, they're unlike plants otherwise unlike above. And so we can clearly see that in all of these pictures. And I took all these Liatris pictures. I've made many observations of Liatris and only one of tufted airgrass. This is why your support in our iNaturalist campaign is very helpful. On to 6. If the bracts are in a single row, right, they wouldn't look shingled in any way. And they might all like terminate at the same height. But we're not seeing that here. We're seeing that they're sub-equal and that they're in 2 or more series. So there's 2 or more rows of shingles. All right. So that gets us all the way to 10. And then we're being asked again about the bracts. And they are either longitudinally striate. So that would be like you could see lines in them. They don't have that, or they just have really faint veins, right? And I'm just not really seeing the veins at all. Maybe the center left picture, you can see like a little break in the glaucous coating, if that's what that is, whatever the white fuzz is. So we're going to go to 13. And now we're being asked, are the flowers purple or yellow? So that's a pretty easy one. We can see that they're purple, and they're always purple. I really haven't seen a ton of variation in this plant in terms of its inflorescence color, except maybe this picture I have here. See how it's like paler? It can be darker or lighter, which I actually think has to do with like the chemicals available in the soil. So we go to 14. And now we see the pappus is in a single series of bristles. I have this picture on the right center right, and I think it's showing this, but you might contradict this. We can't really see that it's a single series, but we can see that they're all kind of reaching a terminal height. And so that was kind of what I was looking at. And then we've got these fun pictures of the leaves, and we can see that I can't really see the resinous dots, but you can see that they're not smooth, right? And then our alternate would be that, oh, punctate also means like the leaves are pointy at the end. So we can see that. And the alternate is that they aren't. And so let us go towards Liatris. All right, so again, we are lucky because we only have a couple couplets. The first thing is the bracts are rounded at the tip, and they're lacerate or fringed, or they are acute and acuminate, ciliate margined, scarious margined, and the heads are cylindric to weedly campanulate. And let's look back at that. We can see that here in these pictures on the left. That they come to a point, they're punctate, and acute, acuminate. And so we go to 2, and the pappus is of feathery plumose bristles. And that we can see in that picture we saw. We'll go right back to it. Again, I don't have measurement pictures. Great to add a ruler if you're taking pictures in the field. And then we see the pelos are pubescent inside, and the leaves are rigid and coarse. And so let's go look. Here's that pappus and the leaves. And we end at 3. And we are asked, are the bracts erect? Are they 4 to 8 flowers per head? And we can see that they are. And so we are at punctata. And alternatively, the bracts would be spreading to reflexed, which would mean that they would like either point horizontally or point all the way down. And that there would be many more flowers. I don't know that I've ever seen squarosa, but again, we can look at the map and see that the other Liatris species are exceedingly rare, right? They're in almost no places. And so in terms of finding them, they would be hard to find. And also we might not want to rob a meager population of the seeds that are available. And we can see in the map of punctata too that this is kind of a species that is a Great Plains species. It's on the east slope, and that potentially prefers like right up into the foothills, the montane, like where potentially there's more moisture.
Hey Maggie, I had a question in the chat, I think.
Does this species need to be newer for germination? What do you mean newer? Like younger?
Like fresher seeds.
Yeah, fresher seeds.
Well, last year, when I was trying to collect this species, they would look like the seeds were full, but unless you did like a seed cut test, it was actually empty. So I think a lot of the seeds that you might find in the wild might actually be empty, depending on the moisture that that area received. That's my only experience with it. I'm sure other people have better explanations.
All right. Are there any questions? And it doesn't have to be about those species, just in general. As we go through this, right, we're training you to know how to collect seeds for us. So we hope you'll hang on and do that in the summer seasons. But obviously you can see this has broad application. And Jenny, do we pick a date on when we would be doing a training like this at your office?
I think we still need to decide on a date, but we would love to do that. We can work on getting, I know we have a species list for kind of one of our clients on the Front Range, so maybe we can find that. And then everyone's welcome in addition to our Eco Point people. So.
Yeah, so just tell me whatever works for you guys, we can move that forward. We don't have a lot of other standing obligations in February.
Okay, cool. Would it be beneficial to have like specimens, or could we do it without any, or do you have any?
I have a lot of grasses in mason jars, which I tend to bring for these training opportunities. But if you send us the species list, we could see if we have any pressed specimens to look at.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll see what I can do. I know we have a lot of Forbes on our list, so.
And Allison, I also wanted to ask you, like, were you collecting seed from horticultural Liatris specimens or wild ones?
No, it was down like south of Salida, like near Howard, Cotopaxi area.
Yeah, and do you know, like, have you ever reached out to Western Native Seed?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so like they're in Cotopaxi. So if you send, no, not Coaldale. They're in Coaldale.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you send an email to like info, Alex will respond and he could probably give you some tips about when he collects it.
Okay. Yeah, Alex Bruce said that potentially that species doesn't stay viable for very long. So I was just wondering if anyone else had that experience, but also when I harvested them, I was not really keen on doing like the seed cutting for viability. So that could also very likely be the case.
Yeah, and Allison, like, we use double-sided tape to like stick it to a cutting board to cut it. But I've also had like great success with nail clippers, like just like put some nail clippers on my hand lens
Mm-hmm.
lanyard. Because of course not really tiny seed, but with a lot of seed, I can just hold it in one hand and clip the cross section. And if the embryo is like filled to the if it's filled to the edges, then it's ready.
Okay.
But if it like is there's a gap there, then it's just not mature or it aborted. So I personally collect Liatris like super late before we have a big wind event or something. But good news for you, I'm coming to your seed swap with
Oh,
a
awesome.
with a bin of seed that you can have any of that you would like. And it was all collected from my own garden because after doing this for several years, as you can imagine, I have access to native plants and now I have like a seed farm. So
Nice. Yeah, I
yeah,
think I'm bringing like 40 different native species and then just a bunch of like veggies that I've grown here for like 5+ years. So I'm really excited
cool.
about our turnout.
Well, Alex and I were cleaning the seed the other day, and Alex Crochet, and I was wondering, like, are you presenting your seed in jars with spoons? Let people fill their own envelopes, or are you putting them in envelopes?
I personally like to see the seed and just touch it and feel it. So all of my stuff is going to be in jars or in bowls with descriptions, and a little bit of info about each one. I know other people prefer like prepackaged envelopes, but I'm very much a visual learner and like that's what I prefer personally, but I'm open to anything.
And you guys have the coin envelopes?
Yeah, we're probably
Okay.
not going to have enough. So if you have any extra you could bring, that would be super appreciated.
Yeah, and Ashley, we're just talking about seed swap in Buena Vista tomorrow from 1 to 3 at the library, which could be prefaced by a morning soak in the hot springs.
Yes.
My favorite thing to do if anyone wants to make the journey. Go to lunch at Jan's. It'll be quite a day.
Also, we have a bunch of volunteers showing up at like noon 15 if anyone can get there early. In the past, we've just kind of, whatever you bring, you put in front of you, and then you can really get to meet and talk to local gardeners. But this year, we're separating everything by species type. And we're going to have a whole native table. So if anyone is available to volunteer, the more the merrier.
Well, cool. I'll be there.
Thanks. I gotta
Hi.
take some bread out of the oven real quick.
I just had a question. I'm new to the project, and I saw that Whipple's penstemon was added to the watch list or the target list, and you, in that, well, I just know that it can be confused with Bleakley's penstemon or penstemon bleakley, which is G1 ranked. It's endemic to the Calabar range, and I would it be helpful to create kind of a training key for differentiating Bleakleys versus Whipples? Is that one of the activities that would be useful?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for raising that comment. And yes, I forgot to say that we are doing what I did to you today for every species, and we do have a pretty extensive slide list of species we've already done, which I'll put in the chat.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and so you can do any species. And we mostly
Yeah.
collected Whipples with a Forest Service partner who wanted it for a specific project. Is that correct, Curtis?
Yeah, that is correct. But I think, I mean, we'll definitely be collecting it this next year, and I think it might be used outside of the Common Garden Study project, just for general use on the Forest Service land.
Yeah, one of the sources for Whipples that I can think of is over by Trinchera Peak, where there is a bunch of wind damage, and the Forest Service is doing logging to clean up the wind damage. So some of the plants right at that alpine interface, the subalpine, might be at risk of some of that activity, and could be a good collection spot. But that's also where it overlaps with Bleakley, and I don't know that it would be good, to accidentally collect some critically endangered penstemon along with it. So another thing that's happening in that range is there's a mass wasting off of Quattro Peak. It's about 5 acres in size, and that could be a good collection spot if it's safe to do so, because eventually that section is just going to crumble. It's already splitting apart with fissures, and so all the plants there might be interesting to collect in that alpine zone.
So no, this is actually an excellent segue into the iNaturalist piece of the
puzzle. If you have already attended extensive sessions about this in past meetings, and you feel like you're already like, okay, I know about this part, I can go and do that. Stick around if you haven't, and I will do a little chat about that. Does that work for people? Okay, great. Let me share my screen again. Awesome. Okay, so we have a project page in iNaturalist where we are collecting observations for our target species. And Whipples is actually one of the more commonly cited ones that we've gotten so far that people have contributed. And you can contribute either in the field, collecting new observations, or by curating those from your past observations, or by other contributors and bringing them up to research grade and then submitting them to this project. So I will pop this in the chat. One moment, please. Stand by. And if you're able to join this project and make contributions by submitting your own or those of other people, that's extremely helpful. It helps us in several ways. Chiefly, it's to locate sites on the national forest or national grasslands. And here is a map of all of the observations of all of the plant species that we collect. And it goes all around region 2, and that's beautiful. We love to see that. Having verified research grade observations of species like whipples that could be confused with other species is very helpful. And of course, before we collect anything, we do key it out in the field. We collect 2 voucher specimens that are reviewed by professional botanists to confirm their identity prior to sending the seeds off to the grow out facilities. And when you get to that if you click on that link and you go up, if you have not joined the project, there will be a little area up here where it says, instead of edit project, it'll say join project. And if you click on that, then you'll be able to add observations to it. And let me see. So giving a walkthrough with the desktop site is a little less, it's different from the, your handheld phone interface, of course, but I think this is only collecting the observations that have been submitted. And we might be having another case of old laptop dysphoria, unfortunately. One of the other ways that this assists us is when we can find research grade observations, we can use those images in the field guide that we're producing. So every volunteer who wants one can have a copy digitally or printed when it is eventually done, and can take that with them, and we'll have it with us at our collection events as well. And these are the ones that have been submitted. And that looks like Bob W., one of his observations. And the project allows you to submit observations from anywhere. However, for our purposes, it is most useful for them to be on Forest Service property. The backdoor mechanisms of setting that up are a bit more complicated than is practical for us. So just use your best judgment about which locations you use. And at first glance, to me, this definitely looks like Whipple's penstemon just because of the dusky cast of that that flower, but bleakly eyes, I don't know from Adam. So getting people to contribute bleaky eyes as well, if you have pictures that you can send me, and I can use them as the the common lookalikes images, then that would help a lot as well. And this is research grade. And if you're looking at someone else's observation, you would add it to the project. But this has already been added, obviously. And that's where it would appear. You can also add notes in the notes field about, the population size, because we really want to have only, suitably large populations to collect from. So at least 50 plants, preferably many more, within a reasonable distance. And this looks like it's on Forest Service land, but that's something that I confirm with another tool called Onyx, and that's not something that you have to worry about. But that's just a very quick and dirty overview. The slides from previous meetings have more information, more of a walkthrough, more options, such as, searching specific parklands, specific forest ranger districts, etc. So if you're interested in those, I will send those along. Does anybody have any requests as to what I could show you on that project page? I will also be giving more of a formal presentation to WRV coordinators at some point in the future. It hasn't been scheduled yet. So for RA, if you're interested in that, that will be coming up in your calendar. I can stop sharing. And we are actually at the top of the hour. So does anybody have any last minute questions or things they want to holler out or requests for next time? You can either leave them in the chat or speak now or forever hold your peace.
Millie, I do have a question, and it's actually not about seed collection per se, but more about your volunteer ask for the SER conference this year.
Maggie would have to be the person to answer that because
Yeah, Ashley, go right ahead.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you were listening. So I put in the chat, I'm on the committee, the planning committee for high altitude restoration, revegetation, which is a subcommittee of SER. And we just found out that the registration fee is going to be upwards of $100, $800, if not more. I put that in the chat. And then all of the workshops and field trips will be additional. So that's, pretty stiff price tag. When you are looking for volunteers, will they be needing to cover their registration fee or part of it? Do you have a sense of that?
Oh, I do have a sense, my dear, and it's not good. I've sat on 2 committees now trying to infuse our presence into the system, and I have not even figured out how to get free registration for anyone, and they only offer volunteer positions to students, and being a volunteer is the only way that you can do it. And so I think I don't have a great answer. I will definitely be going, obviously, because this symposium was already accepted, but my goal is just what you're reading in that proposal is our statewide training. We'll be offering that to our members for free.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think all volunteers will have to register.
Yeah, we're finding the same thing on our end that, there's a lot of emerging professionals and students and, people who want to and should be going, but they just can't make that happen. They're looking for volunteer opportunities or some other way to sort of help with the cost. There's going to be scholarships, but probably not enough, for the people that need a break. So I was just curious. We're running into the same thing with HAR.
Yeah, I know. It's unfortunate. And now I'm on the volunteer committee, which is chaired by Laura Perkins, who actually is also part of our Rocky Mountain Native Plant Materials program. She has a grad student doing, no, I'm mixing that up. Is Laura doing research, Curtis, or just seed collection in South Dakota?
Laura Perkins.
Yeah.
I'm not totally sure. Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
I don't have the answer.
Well, the bottom line is actually we're as close as we can be to like the intimate core of this whole thing, and we still haven't gone anywhere with it. But if you want to sit on the volunteer committee with me for the conference, I'd be happy to advance your name.
Me or?
Well, I just feel like my strategy has been to try to
No.
influence it from the top, you know?
Yeah, well, the HAR is in the same position, I guess, is what I'm saying. So I'm curious if you guys have had any more luck. We've got, we do that every other year, HAR SAR conference. This would be a year that we usually do it, but we're foregoing it until next year for this, of course. But we usually have opportunities for CSU students to volunteer and therefore be able to, have reduced rates for the dual conference, the HAR SER conference. But we just can't offer that to anybody, right? And I was wondering if you're having any luck.
Yep, no luck. Lots
Okay.
of volunteer hours, no luck.
Yeah. It's going to be hard to get volunteers who can pay that price tag. That's what we're finding.
Yep. And so our conference is the weekend before in Denver. And so like we're just going to repeat the training symposium at our conference. So everyone can volunteer or participate for that. Yeah, I feel you. It's unfortunate, and I don't know why it has to be so expensive. Even the Native Seed Conference, $575, $545, something like that.